Welcome to another episode of my podcast that's fine with me. Today we're going to be talking about Jaclyn Hill, Jaclyn Tory, her husband a little bit. We're going to touch some of the podcast in this episode. And you know that most of the time in my podcast, I don't really show you any clips or episodes from different podcasts or different videos. I guess this is the case of today's video. And I'm going to give you my, I guess, not even point of view, but the reason why I started filming this podcast is very interesting. I was watching a lot of different videos and some documentary. I love Jen's documentary. I guess you know her, Jen Love, if I'm not mistaken, and she's doing a great job by, compiling all these facts and giving this to the audience. And I was watching The Ordinary, the fall, like the rise, and about the founder or CEO of The Ordinary company. And then, out of nowhere, I got Jaclyn Hill documentary. And not only it was the main point why I started filming this podcast, but I saw a lot of small clips through internet where Jaclyn, she is going around different podcasts right now. She filmed something with Laura and Manny. She filmed some podcast with Taylor's. Then she filmed another podcast with, I don't remember who was the name of this woman. And I'm going to actually give you all of this, not all, but some, in my opinion, most important clips from this podcast where she was talking specifically about her business. This is a quick disclaimer. Like, everything that I say in this video is just my opinion. And it's not saying this the phrase that I say every single time that it's my opinion. This is actually really my opinion, because I remember what was happening in 2019 and 2018. I remember when we all tuned in this whole drama with James Charles, with Jeffree Star, Tani, and Jaclyn. These years were super controversial, and I can praise Jaclyn for taking accountability and saying that, yeah, I screw up with my lipsticks. It really happened. The only problem that I have here that she tries to flip the narrative right now and try to play this victim card that I don't really buy, and a lot of people, they're pissed about her just like small talks about how it really was, though we know most of it is not true. It's just not simply true. In this podcast, I'm going to be specifically talking about Jaclyn Hill and her brands, about her podcast where she's talking about, again, her brands and her businesses. But at the same time, I don't really want to bring any topics related to her divorce, to her ex-husband, cheating rumors. I don't want to talk about that because this is none of my business. Another really controversial and very important topic that people really love to talk about, the way Jaclyn, she spends her money and this pretty luxury and lavish lifestyle that she's showing all over the media. But this is definitely none of my business, and this is not a point of this video. Maybe we can touch some small details from her personal life, because it's inevitable. But let's get started. What really pissed me off when I was watching one of this documentary, I saw when Jordan, he was going on like different podcasts, and specifically the podcast, I don't remember the name of this podcast. Honestly, I thought that I wrote it down, but I just can't find it right now.
If your identity is tied to whatever is getting canceled, because everybody's got fame and they got their personal life, right? If your identity is tied to that, it will ruin you. It will ruin you. I'm not saying that some people don't deserve to be like, hey, I don't fuck with him no more, I don't fuck with her no more. Like, I get that, man, but like, it's so dangerous to the person on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And I've got firsthand experience of how that shit can rock your world. And it's like, and the truth is, bro, like, what my girl went through with her lipsticks was not her fault. Like, I'm not gonna go into details just for like legal reasons, I don't wanna dabble in that, but like, that was literally not my girl's fault. And the internet ruined her for a while. Like she'll tell you straight up, out of everything she's been through, that was like one of the worst experiences of her life. And it's like, because people made assumptions on shit they don't know. You don't work with labs. You're not signing contracts. You're not in negotiation rooms. You're not in a war room. It's like, you don't know what's going on. You don't know this shit.
I'm going to quote him. If your identity is tied to whatever is getting canceled, because everyone have fame and they got personal life, right? If your identity is tied to that, it will ruin you. But let's talk about a little bit different kind of story. No one was targeting, and this is specifically a term that Jaclyn used.
Here's the tea. There were several other brands in 2018 that launched lipsticks with the exact same issues, but none of them were being aired because everyone was so focused on mine. I'm not going to say the name of the brands, but two brands were huge brands. Okay. And I personally got them in PR covered in fuzzies. And I was like, oh my God, no one's going to talk about these though. Yeah. It's like, I was the chosen target that year. That's fine.
In another podcast, when she was like, I was targeted this year, though other brands had same issues with fuzzies. No one was targeting, I guess, Jaclyn specifically. She said a lot of things in her video that were just simply not true, that she is the owner of a company, that she invested all of her money, and that was a family business, basically.
You deserve to have something of your own in this line that people know, like they are buying into a family business when they purchase from Jaclyn Cosmetics.
But what we know for sure is that the owner of her company, cosmetic company, was Forma Beauty, Forma, if I'm not mistaken, like conglomerate, that owned a lot of other different brands, as well as Morphe was a huge part of Jaclyn's journey and Jaclyn's, I guess, cosmetic line. And when he was saying something about like cancel culture, I really think that this is none of anyone's business to leave any threats or leave some weird comments. I agree with that 100% with Jordan, with everyone else, that cancel culture is very scary at some point, but sometimes that is that is a necessity, because when you try to show yourself, it's like, I'm going to give you the best experience, as Jaclyn mentioned in her original video. I'm going to give you a luxury product for a lower price. It wasn't even a cancel culture with threats. Mainly people were just going out and saying, look at that. I have reviews. I have hair in my lipsticks. I have plastic balls in my lipsticks. I have bubbles. My lipsticks, they melted. And there were so many other issues with this launch that whenever they try to say that she was a victim of this cancel culture, I don't really think it was just a cancel culture for Jaclyn and her lipstick products. I kind of understand what he was talking about, that whenever you're getting canceled because everyone has fame and they get personal life. So it's your identity is tied to that. It's a little bit like the wording is weird, but at the same time, I understand what he was talking about, that people started hating on Jaclyn, though it was all about her launch and her lipsticks. And in this case, her launch and her makeup brand was super tied to her name, because this was her brand. She was selling us products and saying that it was 100%, perfect. That's what people found very weird, and it just really pissed a lot of people that she claimed to be this full perfection, and she said, like, me, I'm a perfectionist, I will deliver the best products. But was she ever responsible for this launch? I guess her partners, as she mentioned them in some of the videos, like, my partners, they didn't want to do a full refund, but I said, no, we have to do a refund. Maybe, again, in the same podcast, Jordan was talking about the thing, like what was going behind the scenes and what was going like behind the curtains, let's say it this way. And you don't know the full picture, you don't know the full story, but do we actually have to know the full story? First and foremost, you're not telling us the full story, and we had to find a lot of things through court documents that Jaclyn was never the owner of her own company. Maybe she thinks that she was kind of like shutting down her businesses, and specifically cosmetic line, because maybe that is allegedly, I don't know, because we still don't really know what happened behind the scenes, because maybe they offered to purchase and buy out her own brand, and she's like, no, I don't want to deal with this, I don't really care, so let's shut this down. But more likely she was never even offer this opportunity, and if this brand was going that well, I guess she wouldn't miss an opportunity to actually buy her brand and earn more money. So when they say, like, you don't know what's going behind the back, yeah, I mean, but I'm a customer, I don't really have to pay attention to what really happened. I have to get a perfect product that Jaclyn claimed to deliver in her video. That is the main thing that pissed a lot of people. If you go to a supermarket and you buy a chicken that is rotten, that is spoiled, just like, this chicken is not good, and you come home, you open this chicken, and you realize that, well, I can literally die if I eat this chicken. You go to a supermarket and you ask for a refund, and then you're presenting the evidence that this chicken is not qualified as a normal chicken that you can actually eat. So when you get a refund and given all this evidence, that's it, a done deal. But some people might actually warn others, like neighbors and probably people they care about, that please don't buy this chicken because something happened behind the scenes that we don't really know. The farm maybe screwed up, or transportation, maybe fridges didn't work. And that is the main reason why you just tell, to bring the awareness of your neighbors that something went wrong. This was the same thing. People were not targeting Jaclyn Hill in a way like, let's do some harm and whatever. People were mainly concerned and said, like, am I gonna actually survive if I put on this lipstick? Because a lot of people were saying that they were contagious, and it's pretty scary when you try to put this on and you eat. Most of us eat with lipsticks on, and it gets in the body, so it can be plastic and some hair from rats. Basically, there were studies that there were actual rat hair in these lipsticks. And I had my biggest problem when Jaclyn Hill, she was like, again, I admire the fact that she acknowledged the fact that, yeah, something went wrong and we screw up. At the same time, I hate the fact she's like minimizing the damage, and she's saying only 2% of those lipsticks were fuzzy. So yeah, I know that I just did a full refund and we paid everyone back, and maybe I do believe that might be only 2% of this fuzz is in this lipsticks. The only problem is that there might be still more percents of lipsticks with hair, with bubbles, melted, ruined, and, just like plastic balls whatsoever. There were so many more other things to add it, and she's not talking about it. She's talking only about fuzzies. And what I hated the most out of all this podcast that she went through, she was like, you know what? I was picked as a target because I'm a female owner or something like this. She was, I don't remember, but like in one of the podcasts, she was like, it's probably because I'm a female owner, and that is the main reason why people try to pick on me. It's not it. It's definitely not it. Not in 21st century. I think when she was like, there were two major brands that had the same issue, and I'm not going to say those names because I'm respectful, so no one really paid attention to them. They picked me as a target. They didn't pick you as a target because they had those fuzzies, and you had fuzzies as well. And she said, like, when I got their PR packages, it was all covered in fuzzies. Fuzzies, it's not that much of a big deal when you have literal hair of animals. And I was watching Jen Love, again, if I'm not mistaken, Jen Love, and great point she brought out that she probably knows these two brands. The first one is Jeffree Star, and they explained that they had a cloth, and when they pressed the pigments, it probably left some fuzzies. And the second one was ColourPop, but it was not even near to what Jaclyn Hill presented us. Another great point here is that she said she thinks that a lot of people were extremely crazy about this launch. It wasn't that bad. It was that bad. I've never in my entire life, and I buy a lot of makeup products. I buy a lot of products that actually expired. I did a haul about a year or 2 years ago where I actually purchased some very luxury products that were expired or almost expired. And in none of these products I found mold. In none of these products I found like they were not melted. They were in great condition. That is the main reason why it's really hard to believe when she says that was not a big issue, and she gets a lot of different products from other brands that were not great condition, and she's using still them, or at least she used to use them. No, I don't remember any crazy scandal like this because no one actually could do this. So the main idea here that her partners we know were Morphe, basically Linda and Forma itself. And when Jaclyn tried to partner with them, they had a huge success with her different products and her different launches, especially her palettes. And most of the time, Morphe, they produce and manufacture their makeup in China, which is okay. But I guess for Jaclyn's option and her cosmetics, they wanted to produce something in the United States. And they wanted to justify the prices. The point here that they found the cheapest lab, and Marlene Steele, she was actually talking about that in a podcast, that she warned Jaclyn about worst labs. And she told her that this lab was bad. And when Jaclyn is saying that, well, we were trying in her original lipstick video, she was like, we saw so many different labs, and probably they did, and we picked the best one. I mean, I'm sorry, you picked the cheapest and the worst lab, according to a lot of chemists that know what was going on, and there were literally animals going around. So Marlene Steele, she was not only supportive of Jaclyn at first when she was still letting her know that some labs were not good, and Jaclyn, she actually ignored her, and then later she is still trying to tell everyone that she's the victim of the story. No, she's not. She was warned. She knew everything about that, but I guess she didn't really care. Or another great thing that I would say, and as Jordan mentioned, that we don't really know the full story, is that she had contractual obligations where she couldn't say a lot of things, and probably she was just a sell person. She was a sell person that had to say that it's a family business, and she had to say that this is pure perfection, made in USA, justify prices, whatsoever. But, this is your name that you put on. And you know that Morphe did you dirty earlier. Years before, do you remember Morphe palettes in collaboration with Jaclyn Hill when they had 4 volume palettes, 4 different palettes with different color, story, something like this. I guess they pressed in pigment too harsh, and that is the main reason why the quality of this eyeshadows was poor. And people, they couldn't just get this on, and it wasn't really working for them. Morphe, as well as Jaclyn Hill, they came out and said, yeah, we know that we screw up. That is the main reason why we're gonna do a refund, call off all of this eyeshadow palettes, and then give it to you later. So in 6 weeks, they had a new relaunch of this Morphe palettes, and they claimed that these palettes were brand new. But again, Marlene Steele mentioned in some other podcast that, you know what, it's probably not true. To have a successful launch, or at least to manufacture products, 6 weeks alone takes to manufacture some eyeshadow palettes. And we're not even talking about packages. We're not talking about shipping, because they have to ship it from China to United States. And you know that the shipping cost, everything is going to be so much more difficult. And a lot of people are speculating and saying that probably they just slapped some new code, or they said that it's a different kind of story and they just sold it again. Well, that is the main reason why Morphe, they had a tendency to deal, like have this shady business. It was always a little bit fishy about Morphe. And that is the main reason why I guess they try to save as much money and try to create this very cheap products from like China, because the cost is so much cheaper than in the United States. I'm not saying that every single product manufactured in China is bad. No, actually, I would say that China, I lived in China and I know that for their local market, the products are outstanding. I'm not kidding, guys. You're getting very cheap products, more or less cheap, and they are going to serve you for years if you actually live there and if you purchase from Taobao and you get the shipping from China. But I honestly have a couple of products that I brought with me from China, and I purchased them 6, some of them even 8 years ago, because I've been living in China for a year, and they're still working and in a great condition, by the way. So the problem here, whenever a lot of investors or a lot of people are going to China, they have to negotiate the product and they have to negotiate the final, I guess, result. So of course, China is like a diverse in this point, and they're going to give you different options. Do you want to get, like a little bit like better quality? It's going to be more, it's going to be a little bit more pricier, but we're going to give you the best quality. Or you need a cheap quality and you can slap a tag on it or a price on that and sell for a crazy amount of money, but with the poorest quality. This is something that I just wanted to put out. It's depending on what quality you're actually looking for. In China, you can actually manufacture great products, but the price is going to be different. And that is the main reason why there's probably a diversity, why some brands, they have great quality, and these eyeshadows that were manufactured in China, and some qualities such as Morphe, sometimes they're not great. And with Morphe eyeshadow palettes, at least before bankruptcy, Morphe before bankruptcy and before like new owners, though I doubt, probably they're still, like behind the scenes, same old owners. So when we're going to be talking about like Morphe palettes, I think that without a great eye primer, they're not going to stay on. And a lot of people were complaining like, it's not staying on. That was my problem. I used my eye primer and it didn't work, while I switched to a little bit different NYX eye primer and it worked. It's depending on, guys. It's just really depending on. But let's give it a benefit of a doubt. Let's still give Jaclyn Hill a benefit of a doubt, as well as Jordan mentioned that we don't really know the full picture. And probably Jaclyn was, contractually obligated to do all that, to say all of that about family business and this all bullshit, just because she didn't have much of a choice. But, just don't you have a lawyer to read the contract and negotiate things, especially when you put your name on the line? And honestly, this is not related at all. Like, it's not related. And you were probably like, what, girl? Just like, we're going to switch off. I totally get this. But I'm into astrology. I'm not an astrologist. Like, I'm not an astrologist, but whenever I look at Jaclyn, I see a sale person, and in my opinion, she just every single time I see a Gemini in her. I know she's a Cancer, if I'm mistaken, but she's like a totally Gemini. I think that is because of her rising sign. She might be like Gemini rising sign, or it's because her Mercury is probably in Gemini. Mercury is the way how you communicate with people, how you communicate with the community, and about the way she sells you products, it's just given so much Gemini, and the way she lies all the time, it's given 100% Gemini. I feel like maybe she have both rising sign and Mercury and Gemini, but she has this strong energy of Gemini. I'm pretty much sure that at least a couple of placements are in Geminis, as well as her every single time whining about comments and like, don't hate me, don't hate my comments, don't do this documentary about me, people don't understand me, people don't understand the full picture. And I totally get it, but it's just given like Cancer moon probably, or just a lot of Cancer, when she's always complaining, when she's always saying that I'm the victim of the story. That is just pissing a lot of people off, because you're lying because probably you are contractually obligated, or maybe just because you love light, or maybe just you believe in this lie and you don't think this is a lie. But people know that you lie, especially about these court documents. So when she's sitting up straight and looking in the camera and saying, you know what, I realized that I want to shut down all my business at once, and this was my decision. And then coincidentally, it just fell into a bankruptcy files of Forma and Morphe. You're like, it's really hard to believe Jaclyn at this point, because you know that it's probably just not true. Probably she was forced to close down at least cosmetic line because she knew that they filed the bankruptcy and they were not gonna manufacture anything else. Though I guess her sales were not really bad. I believe her next launches, they were pretty good and decent, and a lot of people really loved it. But again, benefit of a doubt. Okay, we try to believe it. First launch, she screwed up, but she acknowledged, though, how couldn't she acknowledge the fact that she actually screwed up? It was all over internet, and we still know this. And she's joking about this. I really love this probably strategy, just to say, like, yeah, I screwed up, so what else? I have to own my own mistakes. Then we see 2 more brands from Jaclyn Hill, where I think it's probably not a coincidence that these launches were really bad. Because when we're talking about Cozy, Koze, Koze. There's a Canadian influencer that she was developing this brand for quite a long period of time. And Jaclyn, she just refused to address this issue for a long period of time. Then she managed to film a video where she was talking about her business. And then she threw some shade in some of the videos, like, yeah, it's actually a patent. And people felt disgusted. Later, again, she addressed this issue and said, you know what, we purchased everything by this name, and that was too late for us to back up on the plan, and we had to patent this name sooner than this Canadian influencer. But she then mentioned that she reached out to this influencer and said, like, I'm sorry, like, something. And then we realized that she never did. And that's another lie, because this Canadian influencer said she never did. I never got this mail. And she was very honest about the situation. And why do we believe her, not Jaclyn Hill, is a problem of Jaclyn Hill? That people, they're willing to trust other sources because they know that through her career there were so many lies and there were so many situations when she was like, yeah, we're gonna, just like redo the entire launch, and then they just give you the same launch with more than 4 volumes. And she's like, I don't really know how this happened. I asked them how this happened because her name was on the line with it. First and foremost, she earned a lot of money. Another great point that I forgot to mention about Jordan saying, like, you don't know what happened behind the scenes and cancel culture, whatever. I feel like it's a little bit offended. You earn millions of money. And again, it's not about shaming people for their financial success. It's about, like, you earned a lot of money from these companies, from these collaborations. And, then saying that you're the victim in the story and we don't have the full picture. We don't really have to, because, like, this is your job. No one is asking me, like, why did you screw up on your job? And like, that's because this and that, and finding excuses. I mean, still, I get paid for those jobs, so it has to be delivered. Either I want it or I don't. It has to be delivered because I get paid for that. And I don't really care about what happened behind the scenes, and no one should care about what happened behind the scenes. This is a secret, and you get paid for that. That's it. That's super easy, and that's why I really hated when Jordan was in this podcast saying, like, oh, you don't know this. We don't have to know that. We're just customers. We pay you money. This is your headache, and this is your problem for millions that you're earning. That's it. So now let's go back to her third brand. The brand was Jaclyn Roxanne, and she was selling jewelry. First and foremost, she mentioned that they started their own website. She purchased a warehouse, and a lot of people are pretty agreeing with the fact that probably these two businesses were her own business, and no one was invested, or at least no one that we knew of and know of. That is the main reason why she probably invested her own money in these two businesses, like Koze and Jaclyn Roxanne. But I have the entire video, like very full descriptive video about this launch and about Jaclyn Roxanne jewelry collection. If you're interested, I'm going to leave this down in the description box. You can watch the entire video. I literally have sweat in it.
So I made sure that if you have sensitive skin, this is not going to do any of that to you. I have worn every single piece of jewelry. I have worked out in it. I have sweated in it to make sure that none of that happened.
And what I really like is that when you check out the website, you can see a print screen from my website, from my phone. Keep away from cleansers, soaps, lotions, perfumes, sunscreen, and other liquids. Be sure to take off before you exercise, run, swim, bike, work out. So basically, you can do anything in this jewelry.
These are both made in rhodium, which is extremely high quality, much better than silver. Not going to stain your chest, not going to turn you green, not going to tarnish. It's going to stay good for a very long time. So
then it might turn your skin green because it has some copper, probably has some copper in it. And actually found in one of the comments that it might be brass. Basically, you got plated gold, plated rhodium, low quality jewelries for the price over $100. But what I'm going to say here is that the quality was still poor. People still were complaining. People still didn't like, not even quality, but just straight up lied in the video again that, you know what, it's not going to turn green. And most of the time people complained that it actually did turn green. Then another great thing, she said it's plated silver or plated gold if I'm not mistaken, but then we realized that probably just like plated silver and plated gold, they can actually turn your skin green. Then she said, I sweat in this necklaces or like jewelry. I do everything around the house and they don't really turn green. And then through their website, you can find information. Don't swim, don't sweat, don't, just take a shower. Don't do anything in this jewelry because they might break or they might probably turn green. And in my full descriptive video, I was just, giving you the exact moments from her videos where she was saying, like, it's not going to happen. And then I actually showed you some comments and her own website saying, like, you can do that. And it's not rhodium. So basically, this is in her nature to lie. And whenever she was very open on this podcast about her lipsticks, because again, let me remind you guys, lipsticks were huge and she can't deny this fact any longer. She just can't deny it. And it's just written in the history. With Jaclyn Roxanne, it wasn't that huge, and no one was really like that talkative about the situation any longer. That is the main reason why she's just really quiet. But this is the same pattern that happened with Jaclyn Hill. First, she said that like Morphe 4 volume eyeshadows, they're going to be great quality, but it didn't happen. Then with Becca, if I'm mistaken, she had some issues with quality. And again, we can see that maybe she wasn't related to these cases because she wasn't a brand owner, and they probably just used her name to bring the sales. As well as Jaclyn Cosmetics, okay, I can still give her a benefit of a doubt that maybe she didn't have much of a control because she wasn't an owner. But when you have Jaclyn Roxanne, and there's still an issue with quality, and there's still lies, straight up lies on like, and you're given this, presenting this information as if it's not. I'm sorry, but I'm just so tired of this narrative. That's why I felt super, super angry, and I did not actually plan to film anything about Jaclyn Hill or anything about this whole situation. But then I realized, like, no, you know what? Like, I don't really like when people try to rewrite history. And it's just not only fuzzy, it's just so many more things through the list, and I mentioned them earlier. Another great point here, I mentioned this like through astrological point of view, and it's just like my guesses. I don't really know her birth chart. I don't really know about her. It's just given the impression like this. And when she's always complaining about these bad reviews, bad comments, and people are like, oh, you know, just like you're a liar or whatever, she's like, skip on, just don't follow and whatever. And I totally agree with her. I agree that sometimes you just have to avoid negative comments and just like don't leave them. The only problem that I don't have this video, honestly, but I remember watching Jaclyn's stories in January when the whole situation with Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively happened, and specifically New York Times Magazine, they posted an article about SH and Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. I would tell you for sure that I remember that Jaclyn Hill, she was like super quick and saying like it's not okay, SH is bad, and again super into this topic, and I would say like I agree that it's not okay. But what happened, and it's just not my point here, I mean, like, it's not about Blake Lively, it's not about Justin Baldoni, it's not about Jaclyn Hill, you know, defending Blake Lively in the situation. It's about the point here that you hate when people have no, you know, evidence, when they have no proofs, and they write this nasty comments, and they're like doing documentary about you. And then when you have no proofs from Justin Baldoni's side, when you have no evidence from his side, and you didn't even want to hear his part of the story first, and you jump in your Instagram shitting him for that, and, you know, just like defending Blake Lively, I don't understand, like, why are you asking other people to support you and to be quiet and just mind their own business? And as soon as you get an opportunity to probably judge someone else without extreme evidence or hardcore evidence, just an article, I mean, yeah, I totally got this in New York Times magazine, but at the same time, who said that they always can be right? Who said that they weren't, you know, paid, or they just weren't looking for a banner, and it's like the whole story like blew up? And I couldn't believe it. Honestly, I just couldn't believe about Justin Baldoni, and I wanted to hear his side of the story. I wanted to hear if he had any evidence before I jump into conclusion. Of course, I was like, wow, I'm disappointed maybe, but what does he have to say? And then I saw that Justin Baldoni, he came out with a statement that like, I'm going to tell you the truth, and I'm going to share you real evidence of what really happened. So please stay tuned. And they were compiling all these documents, and compiling with all of this evidence. And that's when we saw the real truth. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the stories from Jaclyn Hill. And again, this is not a story to blame Jaclyn Hill into just like anything she said about the story, because she didn't have evidence of Justin Baldoni. It's not about that. It's more about the fact that you hate when people meddle in your business, when people are hateful and spiteful, but you did similar thing. Accused person in something without hardcore evidence. It's about the hypocrisy, you know? It's about the hypocrisy that I can do this, but people can't do this to me. Because, again, I'm a victim. I was targeted this year, and that's okay. I was targeted, but it's okay. And a lot of people, they try to capitalize on me. They try to earn money from me and whatever. But like, you capitalize on other brands and collaborations all the time. And we do know that she actually screwed up Merlin Steele with her launch. And Merlin Steele, she had to give up this collaboration because she knew that the product is going to be soon expired. That is the reason, like, saying this, it's just a very, very, like, high hypocrisy in my opinion. And about like another podcast that I saw with Laura Lee and Minnie, and at first I thought like, this is the second podcast in a short period of time with Jaclyn Hill. I'm like, is she going to be the third host? And Minnie, he was always like, yeah. I'm like, cool, but do you actually have a chance to talk? Because all the time Laura and Jaclyn, they were talking, and he was like, yeah, sometimes given some comments. And it's just like, he's a host. I mean, he has a right to talk sometimes. It's not the point here. It's not the point. I mean, they were sitting and praising themselves for, I don't know, like 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and just like praising and praising and praising. Like, what is the point of this podcast? It's not giving any useful information. By the way, I did not watch full podcast because it was extremely boring. And like, in my opinion, I'm not saying like maybe someone really liked it, but I just wanted to see like straight to the point. And when these three people call themselves down to earth people, one of those down to earth people, I'm like, oh, girl, it's funny. I mean, it's a little bit corny. And the funny fact is that like, down to earth people, most of the time, they're not going to say that they're down to earth people. They're just down to earth, and they are not commenting anyways. I mean, I get it. You have to probably say something in this podcast to keep it going, but maybe you should do some research and maybe talk about something interesting and neutral, something new, things in this. And they're always like in the previous podcast and this podcast, they were just like dwelling in the past, sort of like trying to rewrite a history that I'm the victim here. And I'm sorry, you're not a victim. You could negotiate, you could ask your lawyers, and you had a lot of money back in the day and still, I guess, have a lot of money. You could negotiate better conditions. Was it greediness? I don't know. Was it just some kind of like unawareness that maybe they can screw you over? I don't know. Was it anything like, just she could have done in a different way? Maybe, but she was doing all these collaborations and working with Morphe and Linda specifically for quite a long period of time. So she had to know that maybe sometimes people can set her up, and she has to know better in this point. But again, this is none of my business. It's just like wild thought, not related to the same point. So yeah, I'm against rewriting history. I'm against this playing the victim card. I'm against, like, you don't know what happened behind the scenes, but you earn all this money, and I don't have to know what went behind the scenes. We know that behind the scenes, she wasn't the owner. That wasn't a family business, that the launch was terrible, that it wasn't just fuzzies, but a lot of more things, that you can't blame other brands because they had fuzzies, such as Jeffree Star and ColourPop. Yeah, they had a little bit of fuzzy. You had literally contagious products with plastic and with animal hair. So, like, let's not forget about that. And that is the main reason why I want to put this message straight there, that, again, it's not about her personal life. It's not about her finances. It's not about anything. It's more like, don't bullshit us. That's it. Okay, guys, that was it for today's podcast. That's fine with me. If you have any stories to share, if you have any opinion, you can leave me comments down in the description box. You can find That's Fine With Me podcast@gmail.com and write me some anonymous information, and I can probably share this with others, or maybe you just want to, have a small talk, whatever. This is not any hate toward Jaclyn Hill. Again, this is not meant to be like a hateful podcast discussing her life, discussing her financial decisions or anything like this. It's more like, just please don't flip the narrative and don't pretend to be a victim of the story. Though I actually praise her for acknowledging the fact that she screwed up, but it was, again, unavoidable. And in most of the cases, she just doesn't want to say that they went through bankruptcy. It wasn't her decision to shut down the business. It wasn't. For some reason, still, that was a bankruptcy. And coincidentally, this was with the way she shut down all her 3 business. That's it, guys. I love you all so much, and I'm going to see you next time. Bye-bye. That was a long live, by the way. It was a long one. I'm tired. I'm going to go and grab some snack.